The Boy with Big Dreams. A small rural town in Texas, surrounded by endless fields and rolling hills. The summer air carries the scent of freshly tilled soil, and the streets are quiet, with little more than the occasional pickup truck passing by. In this serene yet stifling environment, we meet Liam, a 13-year-old boy with restless energy and dreams far too big for his small-town life. Liam shuffled through the dusty gravel road that led to the town square, kicking up tiny clouds of dirt with every step. His wiry frame and unruly mop of brown hair made him look younger than his years, but his eyes, filled with an unspoken determination, betrayed a maturity far beyond his age. In one hand, he clutched an old weathered magazine he'd found abandoned on a table at the local diner, a rare glimpse into a world he could only dream of. The magazine's cover featured a surfer suspended mid-air above a monstrous wave, his body perfectly balanced, radiating freedom and confidence. The image had captivated Liam from the moment he laid eyes on it. He didn't know much about surfing, nor had he ever seen the ocean, but something about the photo spoke to him, igniting a spark deep within his soul. That evening, Liam sat on the creaky wooden porch of his family's modest farmhouse, flipping through the pages of the magazine until they were smudged with fingerprints. His mother, Martha, appeared at the door, wiping her hands on her apron. "What's got you so quiet, Liam?" she asked, her voice warm but tinged with exhaustion from a long day of work. "Look at this, Mom," Liam said, holding up the magazine. "Can you imagine riding waves like that? It's like flying, but on water." Martha chuckled and sat beside him, her tired eyes softening as she looked at the photo. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, but those waves are a long way from here. We've got fields, not oceans. But what if I could do it? What if I could learn to surf?" Liam's voice was filled with a hope that made Martha's heart ache. She loved her son's dreams, but she knew how far-fetched they were. "Liam, I know you've got big ideas, but we have to focus on what's real. There's work to be done here, and dreams like that, well, they don't pay the bills." Liam didn't argue. He knew she was right in her own way. Life on their small farm was hard, and every dollar counted. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant for something more. The next morning, Liam woke before dawn, as he always did, to help his mother tend to the chores. The rooster crowed loudly as he filled buckets of feed for the chickens and helped repair a section of the rickety wooden fence that bordered their property. But even as he worked, his mind wandered back to the magazine and the mysterious, unattainable world it had shown him. Later that day, Liam made his way into town, where the pace of life was as slow as the clock ticking on the wall of the general store. He wandered aimlessly, eventually finding himself outside the local mechanic's shop. That's when he saw it, a surfboard strapped to the roof of a beat-up trailer parked near the garage. Liam's heart raced. He had never seen a surfboard in person before, and its sleek, weathered design made it look like something out of a dream. Standing nearby was a man in his early 40s, with sun-bleached hair, tanned skin, and a face that told stories of years spent chasing waves. "Is that a real surfboard?" Liam blurted out before he could stop himself. The man turned and gave him a bemused smile. "Sure is, kid. What, you've never seen one before?" "Not in real life," Liam admitted, stepping closer. "What's it like?" "Surfing, I mean." The man leaned against the trailer and took a sip from a battered thermos. "It's freedom," he said simply. "When you're out there on the water, nothing else matters. It's just you, the wave, and the moment." Liam hung on every word. "Do you still surf?" The man chuckled and shook his head. "Not much these days. Life's got a way of pulling you away from the things you love. Name's Jack, by the way." "Liam," the boy said, shaking Jack's calloused hand. "How'd you end up here? There's no ocean for miles." "Trailer broke down," Jack said with a shrug. "Figured I'd stay long enough to fix it and move on. But I'm guessing you're not here to talk about mechanics." Liam grinned sheepishly. "No, sir. I want to know how to surf." Jack studied the boy for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said, "Tell you what, kid. If you're serious about learning, I can teach you a thing or two. But you've got to promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't give up when it gets tough. Surfing isn't just about riding waves. It's about resilience. Life's gonna knock you down, but you've got to get back up." Liam nodded earnestly. I promise. That evening, Liam couldn't contain his excitement as he told his best friend, Emma, about his encounter with Jack. Emma, a talented artist with a fiery personality, had always been Liam's confidant. She listened intently as he described his dream of learning to surf. "Do you really think you can do it?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "I have to try, Em. I don't want to spend my whole life wondering, what if?" Emma smiled softly. "Then you better make it happen, Liam. But don't forget us when you're famous." "I could never forget this place," he said, though deep down, he wondered if leaving was the only way to achieve his dream. Cliffhanger. As the sun set over the town, Liam stared at the surfboard strapped to Jack's trailer, a symbol of the life he longed for. He didn't know how, but he was certain of one thing. He was going to ride the waves, no matter what it took. A stranger's influence. A dusty main street in the heart of a small Texas town, where the pace of life is slow and everyone knows each other. Liam's discovery of a mysterious stranger marks the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The next day, Liam's chores seemed to stretch on forever. He fed the chickens, fixed a broken fence, and hauled hay bales under the relentless Texas sun. His thoughts, however, were elsewhere, on the surfboard he'd seen and the man named Jack who owned it. By the time the afternoon rolled around, Liam had made up his mind to return to town. He didn't know what he'd say or if Jack would even want to talk to him again, but he couldn't let the opportunity slip away. The main street of the town was as quiet as always. A stray dog napped in the shade of a hardware store awning, and the familiar smell of fried food wafted from the diner. Liam's heart raced as he approached the mechanic's shop. The trailer was still there, parked under the same oak tree, and the surfboard remained strapped to the roof like a beacon. Jack was leaning against the hood of his truck, sipping from a battered thermos. He noticed Liam immediately and smirked. "Back again, huh?" Liam hesitated but nodded. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said yesterday. About surfing. About the ocean." Jack put down his thermos and crossed his arms. "You're a persistent kid, I'll give you that. But you know, it's a long way from dreaming about surfing to actually riding waves." "I know," Liam said quickly, "but I'm willing to learn. I'll do whatever it takes." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "Do you even know how to swim?" Liam's face turned red. "Not really," he admitted, "but I can learn that too." Jack sighed and motioned for Liam to come closer. "All right, kid. Let's talk. What's a boy like you doing dreaming about surfing when you're miles away from the ocean?" Liam fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "I don't know. It's just, when I saw that picture in the magazine, something clicked. I've never felt like I belong here, you know? Everyone else is happy with their lives, but I keep thinking there's more out there." Jack's expression softened. He saw something familiar in the boy's eyes, a spark he hadn't felt in years. "All right, listen. Surfing's not just a sport, it's a lifestyle. It's about freedom, but it's also about discipline. You'll get knocked down more times than you can count, and you'll have to find the strength to get back up every single time." Liam nodded eagerly. "I can do that." Jack studied him for a moment before leaning back against the truck. "You've got heart, kid. I'll give you that. But learning to surf isn't easy, especially not for someone starting from scratch. And out here, well, it's gonna take a miracle." Liam straightened up. "Then I'll make my own miracle." The two talked for hours, with Jack sharing stories of his younger days. He spoke of dawn patrols, catching waves under golden skies, and the thrill of standing on water as if the ocean itself carried you. Liam listened intently, his imagination painting vivid pictures of the life Jack described. "Why'd you stop?" Liam asked eventually. Jack's face darkened, and he looked away. "Life has a way of pulling you off course," he said quietly. "Sometimes, no matter how much you love something, you have to let it go." Liam didn't push for more. He sensed there was pain behind Jack's words, and he wasn't ready to pry. Instead, he changed the subject. "If I wanted to start learning, what would I need?" Jack glanced at the surfboard on his trailer. "First, you'd need a board. But more importantly, you'd need water, and a lot of it." Liam's excitement dimmed slightly. The closest body of water was the town's small reservoir, and it was nothing like the ocean. "So, I'd have to leave here," he said, more to himself than to Jack. Jack didn't respond immediately. He looked at Liam, the boy's determination written all over his face. "Leaving isn't easy," Jack said finally. "But sometimes, it's the only way to chase what you really want." As the sun began to set, Liam thanked Jack for his time and walked back home, his mind racing. The idea of leaving his small town had always been a distant fantasy, but now it felt like a real possibility. The question was how to make it happen. When Liam reached home, his best friend Emma was waiting for him on the porch. She was sketching in her notebook, her red hair glowing in the golden light of the evening. "Where've you been?" she asked without looking up. "Talking to someone," Liam said as he sat beside her. "There's this guy in town, Jack. He used to be a surfer." Emma raised an eyebrow. "A surfer? In this town?" "Yeah, I know it sounds crazy," Liam said, pulling out the magazine he always carried. "But he told me all about it. The ocean, the waves. It's like nothing else." Emma glanced at the magazine and then back at Liam. "You've really got it bad, don't you?" Liam smiled. "I guess I do." Emma closed her notebook and looked at him seriously. "So, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know yet," Liam admitted. "But I can't stay here forever. I'll figure something out." Emma sighed. "Just promise me one thing. Don't forget about us when you're out there riding waves and becoming famous." Liam laughed, though he could see the worry in her eyes. "I won't forget. I promise. Believe." A starry night outside Liam's family home. The crickets chirp as the small farmhouse glows faintly under the moonlight. Liam wrestles with the decision to leave his town and pursue his dream. Liam couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, his mind swirling with Jack's words. Asterisk, sometimes, leaving is the only way to chase what you really want. Asterisk, the idea was thrilling, but it also filled him with dread. Leaving meant more than just stepping away from his small town. It meant leaving behind his mother, his best friend Emma, and everything familiar. The old clock in the living room struck midnight, and Liam finally sat up. The moonlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows across his room. Quietly, he got out of bed, careful not to wake his mother. He slipped on his sneakers, grabbed the worn-out surf magazine from his desk, and crept outside. The cool night air hit him as he stepped onto the porch. The vast Texas sky stretched above him, dotted with stars. Liam sat down on the wooden steps, clutching the magazine to his chest. His heart felt heavy with the weight of his decision. "You can't sleep either, huh?" a familiar voice said, startling him. Liam turned to see Emma walking up the dirt path, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. Her fiery red hair glinted under the moonlight, and her eyes were filled with concern. "What are you doing here this late?" Liam asked, keeping his voice low. "I figured you'd be up," she said, sitting beside him on the porch. "You've been acting weird since you met that guy, Jack. What's going on?" Liam hesitated. Emma had been his best friend for as long as he could remember, and he hated keeping things from her. Finally, he sighed. "I'm thinking about leaving, Em." Emma froze, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "Leaving? Leaving where?" "With Jack," Liam admitted. "He's leaving town soon, and he said he could teach me how to surf. It's my chance to chase my dream." Emma stared at him, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. "Liam, that's crazy. You don't even know this guy. What if he's lying? What if something happens to you out there?" "I know it sounds crazy," Liam said, his voice trembling. "But I can't stay here forever. I don't want to spend my whole life wondering what could have been." Emma looked away, her hands gripping her sketchbook tightly. "What about your mom? She's counting on you. And what about me?" Liam's heart sank. He hadn't wanted to hurt her, but he knew there was no easy way to explain his feelings. "You're my best friend, Em. You always will be. But this is something I have to do for myself." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Finally, Emma took a deep breath and stood up. "Fine," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "If you're really going to do this, promise me one thing." "What?" Liam asked, looking up at her. "Promise me you won't forget where you came from," she said. "Promise you won't forget me." Liam nodded, his throat tight. "I promise." The next morning, Liam woke before dawn. He packed a small bag with the essentials, a few clothes, his surf magazine, and the little money he had saved from odd jobs around town. He left a note on the kitchen table for his mother, explaining his decision and promising to come back someday. As he stepped outside, the first rays of sunlight were breaking over the horizon, painting the fields in shades of gold and orange. Jack's trailer was parked at the edge of town, its surfboard glinting in the morning light. Liam's heart pounded as he approached. "You're up early," Jack said, leaning against the truck. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of approval in his eyes. "I'm ready," Liam said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Jack nodded. "All right then. Let's hit the road." Liam climbed into the passenger seat, his bag resting on his lap. As the truck rumbled to life and pulled onto the empty highway, he glanced back at the town fading into the distance. The farmhouse, the fields, the dusty streets, it all seemed so small now, like a world he was leaving behind. The drive was long, and the landscape gradually changed from flat fields to rolling hills. Jack didn't talk much, but when he did, his stories were mesmerizing. He spoke of places Liam had only ever dreamed of: California beaches, Hawaiian surf breaks, and remote islands with waves that seemed to go on forever. "So why'd you decide to come?" Jack asked after a while, breaking the silence. Liam hesitated, staring out the window. "Because I don't want to spend my whole life wondering. I want to do something that matters to me." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Good answer. But you need to know something, kid. This isn't going to be easy. Surfing's not just about riding waves. It's about learning to fall and get back up over and over again." "I can handle it," Liam said firmly. Jack smirked. "We'll see." As the sun began to set, they reached a small coastal town. For the first time in his life, Liam saw the ocean. The sight took his breath away. The waves crashed against the shore, their white foam glowing in the fading light. The salty breeze filled his lungs, and for a moment, all his doubts melted away. "This is it," Jack said, pulling the truck into a parking lot near the beach. "Your new classroom." Liam stepped out of the truck, his feet sinking into the warm sand. He stood there, staring at the vast expanse of water, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. "Tomorrow," Jack said, patting him on the shoulder, "we start your lessons. But for now, just take it all in. Welcome to your new life, kid." As Liam stood on the shore, watching the waves roll in under the twilight sky, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. The journey he had dreamed of was finally beginning, but he had no idea what challenges lay ahead. One thing was certain: there was no turning back now. The first wave. Liam and Jack arrive in a small coastal town in California. The salty breeze fills the air, and for the first time, Liam stands before the ocean. His journey to learn surfing begins with unexpected challenges and newfound determination. The roar of the waves was the first thing Liam noticed as Jack's old truck rolled to a stop in a sandy parking lot. It was early morning, and the golden light of dawn bathed the beach in a surreal glow. For a moment, Liam sat frozen in the passenger seat, staring at the vast expanse of water stretching to the horizon. The sight of the ocean, so powerful and alive, was overwhelming. "Well, kid, there it is," Jack said, breaking the silence. "Your first look at the Pacific." Liam stepped out of the truck, the salty air hitting him like a jolt of electricity. He walked across the warm sand, the surf magazine he had carried all this way now forgotten in the truck. The rhythmic crash of the waves seemed to call to him, each one pulling him closer. "It's huge," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack chuckled, walking up beside him. "You get used to it. But don't let its beauty fool you. The ocean's not here to be your friend. It's here to test you." Liam nodded, his heart pounding. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that he was here, the reality felt bigger than anything he could have imagined. Jack wasted no time. After a quick breakfast at a beachside cafe, he brought Liam to a quiet stretch of shore, where the waves were smaller and less intimidating. He pulled an old, battered surfboard from the back of the truck and set it down in the sand. "This was my first board," Jack said, patting it fondly. "It's seen better days, but it's still good enough for a beginner." Liam ran his fingers over the board, the waxy surface rough under his touch. "How do I start?" he asked eagerly. "First, you don't start in the water," Jack replied with a grin. "You start here on the sand." Jack laid the board flat and motioned for Liam to lie down on it. He began explaining the basics: paddling, finding balance, and the explosive movement needed to pop up to a standing position. Liam listened intently, his body stiff and awkward as he mimicked Jack's movements. "Keep your weight centered," Jack instructed. "Your back foot controls direction, and your front foot gives you stability. And remember, always look where you're going, not down at the board." After what felt like hours, Liam was drenched in sweat and his arms ached from endless paddling drills in the sand. But he didn't complain. Every wipeout, every stumble was one step closer to his dream. "All right, enough practice," Jack finally said. "Time to get your feet wet." The water was colder than Liam expected, and he shivered as he waded in, the surfboard under his arm. Jack followed behind him, carrying another board and shouting instructions over the sound of the waves. "Don't go too deep yet," Jack warned. "Stay where the water's about chest high." "That's plenty for now." Liam nodded, his excitement mingling with nervousness. The waves seemed much bigger up close, and the way they crashed against the shore was both mesmerizing and intimidating. Jack steadied Liam's board and held it in place. "All right, kid. Lie down and start paddling. I'll give you a push to catch the wave. Don't try to stand up yet. Just feel the motion." Liam climbed onto the board, his arms moving clumsily as he paddled. When the next wave approached, Jack gave the board a shove, sending Liam forward with the swell. For a brief moment, Liam felt weightless, as if the ocean had taken him into its embrace. He tumbled off the board almost immediately, swallowing a mouthful of salt water as he splashed into the surf. Spluttering, he stood up, wiping water from his face. Jack laughed. "Not bad for a first try. Let's go again." The next few hours were a blur of attempts and failures. Liam wiped out more times than he could count, each fall filling his lungs with salt water and his heart with determination. Jack's encouragement kept him going, his voice cutting through the roar of the waves like a lifeline. "Don't fight the wave. Flow with it," Jack shouted. "And keep your knees bent." By the end of the day, Liam was exhausted. His arms felt like lead, his legs were shaky, and his face was sunburned despite Jack's reminder to reapply sunscreen. But he didn't care. He had caught his first wave, not perfectly, not gracefully, but he had done it. As they loaded the boards back into the truck, Jack clapped Liam on the back. "You've got guts, kid. That's more than most people can say." Liam smiled through his exhaustion. "It's harder than I thought." Jack nodded. "And it's only going to get harder. But if you stick with it, you'll learn to love the challenge." That evening, they returned to the small beachside motel Jack had booked for them. As Liam sat on the porch, staring at the dark ocean under a star-filled sky, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had taken his first step, however small, toward the life he had always dreamed of. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his reverie. Jack joined him, holding 2 steaming mugs of hot cocoa. "Thought you could use this," Jack said, handing Liam a mug. "Thanks," Liam said, wrapping his hands around the warm ceramic. They sat in silence for a while, the distant sound of waves filling the space between them. "You did good today," Jack said finally. "But remember, this is just the beginning. Surfing's not just about riding waves. It's about understanding the ocean, respecting it. You've got to put in the work every single day." Liam nodded. "I will." Jack studied him for a moment, then smiled. "I believe you." As Liam lay in bed that night, his body aching and his mind racing, he thought about the ocean waiting for him in the morning. The waves were no longer just a dream. They were a challenge, one he was determined to conquer. What he didn't know was how much those waves would test not only his skill, but also his resilience in the days to come. Waves of rivalry. Liam begins to attract attention from the local surfers as he continues to train under Jack's guidance. He enters his first amateur surfing competition, where he faces unexpected challenges and builds new relationships. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of Liam's life. Every morning, before the sun rose, he and Jack would head to the beach. The first few minutes were quiet, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the space between them. Liam would stretch, rub wax onto his board, and mentally prepare for another day of battling the ocean. The ocean didn't make things easy. Liam was tossed off his board more times than he could count, his body constantly sore from paddling and falling. Jack, ever the tough coach, watched closely, offering sharp but constructive feedback. "You're hesitating too much," Jack said one morning as Liam wiped salt water from his face after another wipeout. "You've got to trust yourself. The wave's not going to wait for you to decide." Liam nodded, determination etched on his face. "I'll get it." And slowly he did. His paddling became stronger, his balance steadier, and his confidence began to grow. He caught his first real wave on a quiet, overcast morning, standing up and riding it all the way to shore. Jack let out a rare cheer from the water, clapping as Liam paddled back out. "Now that's how you do it, kid," Jack said with a grin. "Keep that up, and you might actually stand a chance out here." It wasn't long before the local surfers started to notice Liam. Most were friendly enough, giving him nods of acknowledgement or offering the occasional tip. But not everyone welcomed the new face on their turf. One afternoon, as Liam practiced on a crowded stretch of beach, a group of older surfers gathered nearby. At the center was Caleb, a tall, confident surfer with sun-bleached hair and a board that looked custom-made. "Hey, Grom," Caleb shouted, using the slang for a young or inexperienced surfer. "You've got some nerve showing up here and thinking you can take our waves." Liam froze, unsure how to respond. Jack, who was sitting on the beach waxing his board, stood up and walked over. "Back off, Caleb," Jack said, his tone calm but firm. "The ocean doesn't belong to you." Caleb smirked. "Oh, come on, Jack. We're just having some fun. Let's see if the kids got what it takes." Before Liam could process what was happening, Caleb pointed to the waves. "Let's make it a challenge. 1-on-1. Whoever rides the best wave wins." Jack looked at Liam. "You don't have to do this." But Liam squared his shoulders. He was tired of being underestimated. "I'll do it." The challenge drew a crowd. Locals gathered on the shore, some cheering for Caleb, others curious to see how the newcomer would perform. Liam's heart pounded as he paddled out beside Caleb, the older boy exuding confidence with every stroke. The first wave came, and Caleb caught it effortlessly, carving across the face of the wave with precision. The crowd cheered as he finished with a clean turn back to the lineup. Liam took a deep breath, focusing on the horizon. Another wave rolled in, and he paddled hard, timing his takeoff perfectly. He popped up onto his board, his legs steady as he rode the wave. It wasn't as polished as Caleb's performance, but the crowd erupted in cheers, impressed by his determination. As the challenge went on, Liam began to find his rhythm. Each wave he caught was better than the last, and though Caleb remained skilled, Liam's passion and grit began to shine through. When the final wave came, both surfers paddled hard. Caleb caught it first, performing a series of sharp maneuvers that showcased his skill. Liam followed, catching the wave behind him. He didn't try to match Caleb's style. Instead, he focused on riding the wave with a fluid grace, letting his instinct guide him. When the two returned to the shore, the crowd applauded. Jack walked over, clapping Liam on the shoulder. "You held your own out there," he said. "You've got nothing to prove." Caleb approached, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Liam thought he was about to say something cruel. But instead, Caleb smirked and extended his hand. "Not bad, Grom," Caleb said. "You've got potential. But don't think I'll go easy on you next time." Liam shook his hand, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "I wouldn't want it any other way." That evening, as the sun set over the beach, Liam sat with Jack and a few of the locals who had welcomed him into their group. Among them was Mia, a talented young surfer who had watched the challenge from the shore. "You did great out there," Mia said, sitting beside Liam. Her long, dark hair was damp from the ocean, and her smile was warm. Most people wouldn't have had the guts to take on Caleb. "Thanks," Liam said, his cheeks reddening. "I just wanted to prove I belonged." "You do," Mia said simply. "But don't get too comfortable. There's always more to learn." The two talked late into the evening, sharing stories about their lives and their dreams. Mia had been surfing since she could walk, but she admired Liam's determination and the way he had thrown himself into the sport despite his lack of experience. By the time Liam returned to the motel that night, he felt a newfound sense of belonging. He wasn't just a boy from Texas chasing an impossible dream anymore. He was part of something bigger, a community of people who shared his love for the ocean and the waves. As Liam drifted off to sleep, exhausted but happy, Jack knocked on his door. "Get some rest, kid," Jack said. "There's a competition coming up. If you're serious about this, it's time to step up your game." Liam's eyes snapped open, his heart racing. A competition. The stakes had just gotten higher. Breaking tide. After his first amateur surfing competition, Liam begins to see both the rewards and the harsh realities of pursuing his dream. Tensions rise between him and Jack when secrets from Jack's past come to light, threatening their mentor-student relationship. The evening after the competition, the beach was nearly deserted. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting the waves in shades of orange and gold. Liam sat on the sand, his surfboard resting beside him. His body ached from the day's effort, and his mind was replaying every moment of the event. He hadn't won, but he hadn't been last either. His performance had drawn cheers from the crowd, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged among the surfers. Yet, beneath the satisfaction of holding his own was a nagging doubt. Watching the top competitors carve through the waves with precision had shown him how far he still had to go. Jack approached from behind, holding 2 bottles of water. "Here," he said, handing one to Liam. "Thanks," Liam said quietly, twisting off the cap and taking a sip. "You did good out there," Jack continued, sitting down beside him. "For your first competition, you held your ground." Liam nodded, but his face remained tense. "It wasn't enough, though. Caleb wiped the floor with me." Jack laughed softly. "Kid, Caleb's been surfing since he could walk. You've been at it for what? A few months. You've got no reason to be hard on yourself." Liam looked down at the sand, picking at a small rock. "What if I'm just not good enough? What if I can't catch up?" Jack sighed, his tone shifting. "That's the thing about surfing and life. It's not about being the best. It's about the ride. You're gonna fall and you're gonna lose, but if you love it, you keep getting back up." Liam didn't respond immediately, and Jack stood up, brushing sand off his jeans. "Get some rest, kid. Tomorrow, we're back at it." The following week, Liam threw himself into his training with renewed intensity. Every morning, he was the first one in the water, and every evening, he stayed until the sun disappeared behind the horizon. Jack pushed him harder than ever, fine-tuning his technique and forcing him to confront his weaknesses. But something was different about Jack. He seemed more distant, his usual light-hearted banter replaced by a heavy silence. He snapped at Liam more than usual, his patience wearing thin. Liam noticed the change, but didn't dare ask about it. Jack's mood seemed like a storm cloud hovering just out of reach, and Liam didn't want to be the one to bring it down. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Liam finally decided to ask. They were sitting outside the beachside motel they shared, their boards leaning against the wall. "Jack," Liam began hesitantly, "is something wrong?" Jack glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "What makes you say that?" "You've just been different lately," Liam said. "I don't know. Like you're carrying something heavy." Jack took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair, staring at the darkening sky. "Kid, there are things about my life you don't know. Things I'm not proud of." Liam frowned. "Like what?" Jack hesitated, then began speaking, his voice low and filled with regret. "I used to be on top of the world. Surfing was my life, and I was good at it. Competed in all the big tournaments, had sponsors, fans, the whole deal." "What happened?" Liam asked softly. Jack's jaw tightened. "I let it all go to my head. Started partying too much, ignoring the people who mattered. I lost everything. My career, my friends, my family. The worst part is, I didn't even realize what I had until it was gone." Liam stared at him, the weight of Jack's words sinking in. He had always seen Jack as a mentor, someone who had everything figured out. Hearing about his past shattered that image, replacing it with something more complicated. "Why are you telling me this now?" Liam asked. Jack turned to him, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Because I see myself in you. You've got the same fire, the same drive. But I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. If you're going to chase this dream, you need to keep your head on straight. Don't let it consume you." The revelation created a tension between them that neither of them knew how to navigate. Liam couldn't help but feel like Jack had let him down. He had always thought of Jack as a hero, someone who had conquered the waves and come out stronger. Learning that he had fallen so far made Liam question everything. Their training sessions became strained. Jack's instructions were sharper, his critiques harsher. Liam, in turn, pushed back, growing frustrated with what he saw as Jack's hypocrisy. One morning, as they prepared to head out, the tension boiled over. Jack was explaining a technique for riding bigger waves, but Liam wasn't listening. He had heard enough of Jack's advice and was tired of being treated like he didn't know anything. "Why should I even listen to you?" Liam snapped. "You screwed up your own life. What makes you think you can tell me how to live mine?" Jack froze, his face hardening. "Because I've been where you're trying to go," he said, his voice low and steady. "And I know how easy it is to lose yourself along the way." "Well, maybe I don't want to end up like you," Liam shot back. The words hung in the air, heavy and painful. Jack stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. For the next few days, they barely spoke. Liam continued to train, but without Jack's guidance, he felt lost. The ocean, which had once been his sanctuary, now seemed like an unpredictable force, ready to swallow him whole. One evening, as Liam sat alone on the beach, Mia approached him. She had been one of the few locals to befriend him after the competition, and her presence was a welcome relief. "You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world," she said, sitting beside him. Liam sighed. "It's Jack. We had a fight, and now I don't even know if I can trust him." Mia frowned. "Jack's got a lot of baggage, but he cares about you. You can see it in the way he pushes you, the way he shows up every day." "I just don't get why he's so hard on me," Liam said. "Maybe he sees something in you that he didn't see in himself," Mia suggested. "Maybe he's trying to help you avoid the mistakes he made." Liam considered her words, the tension in his chest easing slightly. "Do you think I should talk to him?" Mia nodded. "Definitely. But do it when you're ready. He'll be there." As the waves rolled in under the moonlit sky, Liam realized that his journey wasn't just about mastering the ocean. It was about understanding himself and the people who had become part of his story. He knew he couldn't move forward without confronting Jack, but the thought filled him with both fear and determination. The next step wouldn't be easy, but it was one he had to take. The big break. Liam arrives in Hawaii for a major surfing competition, the biggest challenge of his journey so far. The stakes are higher than ever, and he must face not only the ocean but also his doubts, rivalries, and the weight of his dream. The plane descended over the crystal-clear waters of Hawaii, the golden beaches and lush green mountains coming into view. Liam pressed his face to the window, his heart pounding with excitement and nerves. This was it, the pinnacle of everything he had been working toward. The invitation to compete in the Keiki Classic, a prestigious amateur surfing competition, had come as a shock, but Jack had insisted he was ready. "Welcome to the big leagues, kid," Jack had said, handing Liam the entry form. "This isn't just about proving yourself. It's about seeing how far you've come." Now, as Liam stepped off the plane, the warm tropical air hit him like a wave. The sounds of the island, birds chirping, the rustling of palm trees, and the distant crash of waves set the stage for the biggest test of his young life. The days leading up to the competition were a blur of preparation. Liam spent hours in the water, familiarizing himself with the Hawaiian waves, which were larger and more powerful than anything he had experienced in California. The ocean here felt alive, almost sentient, its energy both intimidating and exhilarating. Mia had joined him on the trip, her presence a comforting anchor amid the chaos. She often sat on the beach, sketchbook in hand, offering words of encouragement between sessions. "You're going to kill it out there," she said one evening as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. "You've worked harder than anyone. You deserve this." Liam smiled, though his nerves were still palpable. "What if I choke? What if I'm not ready?" Mia placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've already proven you belong here, Liam. The rest is just riding the wave." Jack, meanwhile, had taken on the role of strategist. He walked Liam through the lineup, pointing out the best spots to position himself and studying the other competitors. Among them was Caleb, who had also been invited to the event. The rivalry between the two had grown over the months, and Liam couldn't deny that Caleb's presence added extra pressure. The morning of the competition arrived, and the beach was a hive of activity. Spectators lined the shore, their cheers blending with the sound of the waves. Liam stood at the edge of the water, his board under his arm, his heart racing. The other surfers were already paddling out, their movements fluid and confident. "Remember, kid," Jack said, standing beside him. "It's not just about the tricks. It's about reading the wave, feeling it, and making it yours. Trust your instincts." Liam nodded, taking a deep breath. "Got it." The first heat was a test of endurance. Liam paddled hard, positioning himself in the lineup and waiting for the perfect wave. When it came, he launched himself forward, his arms moving with precision as he popped up onto the board. The wave carried him, its power surging beneath his feet. He leaned into the turn, his body flowing with the motion of the water. The crowd roared as he finished the ride, and for the first time that day, Liam felt a surge of confidence. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. As the day progressed, the competition grew fiercer. Each heat brought new challenges, from unpredictable waves to the unrelenting skill of the other surfers. Caleb, true to form, dominated his heats with ease, his sharp turns and aggressive style earning him high scores. Liam, in contrast, focused on consistency and precision, letting his connection with the ocean guide him. By the time the final round arrived, the beach was electric with anticipation. The last heat would determine the winner, and Liam found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with Caleb and two other competitors. The waves had grown larger as the tide came in, their towering faces a reminder of the stakes. "This is it," Jack said, patting Liam on the back. "Leave it all out there." Mia gave him a thumbs up from the crowd. "You've got this, Liam." Liam paddled out, his muscles aching from the day's effort. The ocean felt different now, its energy both chaotic and exhilarating. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the waves fill his mind. When he opened them, a massive set was rolling in. Caleb caught the first wave, carving across its face with expert precision. The crowd erupted in cheers as he finished with a dramatic cutback. Liam watched, feeling the familiar pang of doubt creeping in. But then his wave came, a towering wall of water that seemed to call his name. He paddled hard, feeling the wave lift him, and popped up onto his board. The world around him blurred as he dropped down the face of the wave, his body instinctively moving with the flow. Liam leaned into a turn, his board slicing through the water like a knife. The wave began to close out, and for a split second, he hesitated. Then, with a burst of courage, he crouched low and pulled into the barrel. The wave curled over him, a tunnel of water that roared like thunder. Time seemed to slow as Liam emerged from the barrel, his board gliding smoothly onto the open face. The beach erupted in applause, the sound barely registering in his ears as he paddled back out. The final scores were announced on the beach. The crowd gathered around the judges' tent. Caleb took first place, his aggressive style earning him the top spot. But when Liam's name was called for second place, a surge of pride washed over him. He had come to Hawaii to prove himself, and he had done just that. Jack clapped him on the back, a rare smile breaking through his usual stern demeanor. "You did good, kid. Real good." Mia threw her arms around him, her excitement contagious. "Second place in your first big competition. You're amazing." Liam laughed, the tension finally leaving his body. "I couldn't have done it without you guys." That evening, the competitors gathered for a celebration on the beach. The bonfire crackled, its warm light illuminating the faces of surfers who had become both rivals and friends. Caleb approached Liam, a beer in hand and a smirk on his face. "You surprised me out there, Grom," Caleb said. "You've got something special. Keep working at it, and who knows? You might even beat me one day." Liam grinned. "I'll hold you to that." As the night wore on, Liam found himself staring at the ocean, its waves shimmering under the moonlight. The competition had tested him in ways he hadn't expected, but it had also shown him how far he had come and how much further he wanted to go. As Liam stood on the shore, feeling the cool sand beneath his feet, Jack approached, holding an envelope. "This came for you," he said, handing it to Liam. Inside was an offer from a major sponsor, a chance to take his surfing career to the next level. Liam's heart raced as he realized that his journey was only just beginning. Homecoming. After months of intense training, rivalries, and personal growth, Liam returns to his hometown as a professional surfer. The journey comes full circle as he reconnects with his roots and reflects on how far he has come. The flight back to Texas felt surreal. Liam stared out of the small airplane window, watching the clouds roll by as the hum of the engines filled his ears. The envelope Jack had handed him weeks ago had changed everything. Inside was a sponsorship deal, a real chance to pursue surfing as a career. But before diving into this new chapter, Liam had made one decision. He needed to go home. When the plane landed, the familiar sights of his small Texas town came into view. The dusty roads, the sprawling fields, and the distant silhouette of the farmhouse where he grew up felt both nostalgic and foreign. Everything seemed smaller now, as if the world he had once known had shrunk while he had grown. Liam stepped out of the old cab in front of his family's farmhouse. The porch creaked under his weight as he climbed the steps, the sound instantly transporting him back to the countless evenings he'd spent sitting there, staring at the horizon and dreaming of the ocean. "Mama," he called out, his voice tentative. The screen door swung open, and his mother, Martha, appeared. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she seemed frozen in place. Then, without a word, she rushed forward, wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. "Liam," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. "You're back." "I missed you, Mama," he said, his throat tight. "I wanted to come sooner, but there was so much going on." Martha pulled back, her hands on his shoulders as she studied him. "Look at you. You've changed. You're taller. And is that a tan?" Liam laughed, the sound light and genuine. "The sun's kind of hard to avoid when you're surfing every day." Martha shook her head, smiling. "Come inside. Tell me everything." As Liam sat at the old kitchen table, sharing stories of his time in California and Hawaii, the weight of his journey hit him. The boy who had once snuck out of this very house with nothing but a dream and a worn-out surf magazine felt like a distant memory. Later that day, he made his way into town. The dusty streets were as quiet as ever, but there was a buzz in the air as people began to recognize him. Whispers followed him wherever he went. "Is that Liam? The kid who used to hang out at the market? He's a professional surfer now, isn't he?" Liam felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. He wasn't used to the attention, but it felt good to see his hometown acknowledge what he had accomplished. At the diner where he had first discovered the surf magazine, Liam ran into Emma. She was sitting in their old booth, a sketch pad open in front of her. Her red hair was tied back, and she looked up with a start when she saw him. "Liam," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "Hey, Em," he said, smiling. She stood up, crossing the room in 2 quick strides to hug him. "You're back. I can't believe it." "I missed you," he said honestly. "I missed this place." They sat together, talking like no time had passed. Emma shared her own news. She had started selling her artwork online and was planning her first gallery show in the city. Liam couldn't help but feel proud of her. "You know," she said, leaning forward, "when you left, I thought I'd never see you again. But I'm glad I was wrong. I couldn't stay away forever," he said. "This town, it's part of me." That evening, the town gathered at the park to welcome Liam home. Jack had called ahead to let a few people know he was coming, and word had spread quickly. By the time Liam arrived, the park was filled with familiar faces, all eager to celebrate his success. Caleb was there, too, having flown in to surprise him. "Didn't think I'd miss this, did you, Grom?" Caleb said with a grin, clapping Liam on the back. Liam laughed. "You're impossible to get rid of." As the night wore on, Liam stood in front of the crowd, holding a microphone someone had handed him. "I don't even know where to start," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "When I left this town, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I wanted something more. But everything I've accomplished, I owe to the people here. My mom, my best friend Emma, and everyone who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." The crowd cheered, and Liam felt a warmth spread through his chest. This wasn't just his victory, it was theirs, too. After the event, Liam returned to the farmhouse. He stood on the porch, staring at the night sky, just as he had so many times before. This time, though, the stars didn't feel so far away. His dreams weren't distant, they were his reality. Jack joined him, holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. "You did good, kid," he said, handing Liam a cup. "Thanks, Jack," Liam said, taking a sip. "For everything." Jack nodded, his expression unreadable. "What's next for you?" Liam smiled, looking out at the horizon. There's so much I want to do. Competitions, traveling. But I also want to give back. I want to help other kids who feel stuck, who dream of something bigger. Jack raised his cup. To the next chapter. To the next chapter, Liam echoed, clinking his cup against Jack's. The next morning, before leaving town, Liam stopped by the diner one last time. He placed the surf magazine that had started it all back on the table where he had found it, hoping it would inspire someone else. As he walked out the door and headed toward his future, he felt lighter than he ever had before. The waves of destiny had carried him far from home, but they had also brought him back, stronger and more determined than ever. This was just the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold, one wave at a time. The end.